One of the really cool things about HTML is that it allows people who use assistive technologies such as screen readers to access and interact with the content of your website via semantic HTML and HTML attributes. In this lesson, we'll explore 3 common elements of websites: images, social media icon links, and forms, and how using the built-in functionality of HTML ensures that everyone can use and access the content on your websites regardless of the browser or machine they're using. To demonstrate these concepts, I'll be using VoiceOver on macOS as the assistive technology. First up is images. Images are a big part of the web and often offer important extra context to the content of the web page. Take, for example, this article titled Neon Dreams about a city lit up at night, which uses this image as inspiration for the writing. Here, I'm using my mouse cursor to hover over the part of the web page that I want VoiceOver to read.
As the sun dips below the horizon, the city undergoes a radical transformation. What was once a concrete jungle of grey and beige bursts into a symphony of electric violet.
It works great for text. However, when I hover over the image, there's no machine-readable information for VoiceOver, and so it ignores it. By adding one HTML attribute to this image, we can provide information to VoiceOver and, in turn, offer more context to the article for all readers. When you add a new image in Nordcraft, you'll get 2 HTML attributes already attached to that element, which you can see in the Attributes panel on the right. Source, which is the URL to the image, and alt, which stands for alternative text. This is where we can describe that image in words for technologies like VoiceOver to read out. If we add some descriptive text into the alt attribute value field here, you'll now hear that description read out by VoiceOver when I hover it.
A neon-lit Japanese cityscape at night taken from the perspective of looking down a square cobbled road with vibrant violet, cyan, and gold lights illuminating the streets and buildings. In the foreground there is a zebra crossing where a young male wearing shorts, a backpack and bright orange trainers is helping a woman in a red jacket and flip-flops cross the road. Many people are seen either side of the road walking towards and away from the camera. Many are holding umbrellas and wearing shorts and t-shirts, indicating there's light rain happening in a warm climate. Image.
The alt text attribute is also what is shown by browsers if the image can't be loaded for any reason. Next, let's look at social media icon links. A common pattern on the web is to provide a horizontal list of social media links as icons rather than text. This is usually to save space, especially on mobile devices. Here I have a list of icons where each one is wrapped in an anchor tag with an href attribute containing the link to the social platform. Now, because this list doesn't contain any text, the HTML can't communicate any information to assistive technology about the link apart from the URL itself.
Link. Image. https://bsky.app/
You can confirm this using browser DevTools to inspect the accessibility properties. Currently, there's no information specified about any of these links for humans. When focusing on this link, VoiceOver will read out the full link, which isn't ideal. You'll notice here that the browser is looking for a title attribute. Let's add one to each anchor tag to provide a better description of the link for humans. Select an anchor tag, view the Attributes panel on the right by pressing A on your keyboard, click the plus button next to Attributes, search for title, select it, and enter a suitable descriptive title such as Follow on Blue Sky. Now, in Browser DevTools, you'll see the browser has recognized this title, and VoiceOver will read out the provided title when the link is focused.
Link. Image. Follow on Blue Sky. You are currently on a link.
You'll also notice that VoiceOver currently reads out the word image, which is kind of unnecessary, and gets in the way of the actual title of the link. We can improve this further by adding another HTML attribute to each icon. By adding the role attribute with the value of presentation, VoiceOver will skip the word image and just provide the most important information, the fact that it's a link, and the title.
Link. Follow on Instagram. List 3 items. Link. Follow on Bluesky. Link. Subscribe on YouTube.
Finally, let's look at forms. Now, building HTML forms is not trivial and probably requires a full dedicated module. But the next part of this lesson is designed to get you thinking about the different HTML elements and attributes you can use to build semantic and accessible forms. We're going to use this simple login form as an example and cover how we can use HTML to describe how the form works to a browser. Form fields are wrapped in an HTML form tag and can be a variety of different HTML elements providing different functionality. You can use the HTML element catalog in Nordcraft to filter elements that can appear in a form for the full list. To submit a form, you need an HTML button or input element with a type attribute of submit. In this form, I have 2 input fields, one for username and one for password. I'm using the type attribute on each input to describe the type of data the form field expects, which instructs the browser to add tailored functionality for each field. The username field has type text and the password field has type password. Using type text means the text will show in the input field as it's entered, and using type password will hide what is typed with little dots. Using type number, for example, means the browser will only allow numbers to be entered into the form field and will also instruct the browser to include arrow buttons to increase or decrease the number. You can click on the type attribute value field to reveal a drop-down of all the possible type values available to you. Each form input field has a label stating what the purpose is. To associate each label and form input with each other to make sure the browser knows they're connected, we use 2 HTML attributes, ID and for. For example, on the input element for the username, add an ID attribute with the value username. On the label for the username field, add a for attribute with the same value as the ID on the input field, so in this case, username. What's helpful is that some browser dev tools will show a warning if labels are not associated with form fields. Here in a Chrome-based browser, we can see that the password field label and the input element are not associated. To fix that, we can add an ID attribute on the password input of password and a for attribute on the password field label, also with the value of password. Some other tips on making forms work well. You can use the autocomplete attribute to provide guidance to the browser about the type of information expected in the field. This helps password managers and other form filling utilities autocomplete a form correctly. And you can use the HTML attribute required to instruct the browser to only submit the form if all required fields are completed. Finally, you can use the HTML placeholder attribute to provide an example of what the completed field should look like. This lesson was designed to get you thinking about how to use machine-readable HTML to provide relevant information to the humans who are using your websites, so they can access the content and use the functionality regardless of the browser or the machine that they're using. Accessibility can go very deep, but the most important thing to remember is that when building your website, consider how the browser will interpret the HTML and what you need to communicate to humans. With those things in mind, keep exploring the native capabilities of HTML to discover what elements and attributes are most suited to what you're building. And as ever, if you need a little help, you can always ask the AI assistant.